the recording. Today's webinar is about addressing Viva feedback, and we will look at a number of specific topics like what the Viva is about, possible Viva outcomes, preparation strategies, what to expect in the Viva and what not to expect, what actually is going to happen at the Viva day, example Viva questions by chapters that might be expected, what happens post-Viva, and then we close the webinar off the record with a group activity to reflect on the biggest worries that you might have and that you would like to discuss and clarify. So what is the Viva all about? It's an oral-only examination. That means you're not allowed to bring any slides or presentations with you. You will be questioned and are expected to respond. So it's an oral examination, and for the case of the United Kingdom, it's usually behind closed doors, and there are typically two examiners that are being one from your university and one from another institutions, and your supervisor might or might not participate in the Viva, but he is not allowed, if he is participating, to become active. So he's an independent observer, and there will equally be an independent chair who facilitates the oral examinations. So this is how it is in the UK, but in other countries, the Viva might work different. Now, the main purpose of the Viva is confirming that the thesis is your own work, that you are understanding what you have been written. So basically, understand what you have been written means the examiners will want to confirm that what they have read is matching with what you really wanted to say. And let me mute everyone. Okay. And you will be expected to discuss and defend your research, defending not in the sense that you are expected to say this is correct and this is wrong, but you need to explain and justify why you did things, how you did things. And in the case you understand in the Viva that things are not perhaps being presented in the correct way, then also that needs to be acknowledged. And you should show that you know your wider research fields, but also in depth your research that you have been carrying out, and that you understand the possible future research that might be carried out. After the Viva, there are a number of possible outcomes. One of the outcomes, which I thought never would be happening, is to be directly awarded a degree. Recently, however, I came across a student who was directly awarded. So it's possible, but it's extremely rare. What is much more possible is that you get out with minor modifications, or that you get out with major modifications. Both is pretty fine. The difference in between the one and the other is the time frame that's given to you. Usually for minor, you get up to 3 or 6 months, while for major, it's 6 months plus. And this minor or major difference will depend very much on your situation. If you're a full-time worker, then the examiners will certainly take that into consideration, therefore rather giving you more time than less. So this is absolutely not an issue. And a major revision and resubmission is also not a broken leg. And some universities don't know major modifications without resubmissions. So it also depends very much on what your university is exactly offering on that end. Now, what you certainly do not want to have is to be awarded a lower degree than the one submitted, or a fail. A fail is quite rare, but possible. And I've come in all the years across only one fail, and it was a very deserved fail, I would say, because the candidate was full of ignorance and arrogance, and didn't really consider any of the feedback provided by the examiners. And well, in such a case, I think there's no other option for the examiners to let the candidate fail. Now, if you don't do this mistake, very unlikely you will be a failed candidate or awarded a lower degree. Now, what are the preparation strategies? I think one should start by understanding where are you and how good is your thesis. There are a number of reasons why you might want to consider submitting your thesis, even though if you are not sure it's up to standard. And one of the most obvious one is if you're running out of time. Now, this should not be happening, but over the years, I've seen many students that literally were running out of time. That means you, as a full-time student after 4 years in the UK, are out of the program, or as a part-time student after 8 years, you're out of the program. So counting back, there will be a deadline when you need to submit your thesis. Elsewise, it's not possible that you would graduate within time. Now, after the Viva, given that you anyway will very likely go out with minor or major revisions, you still can improve your thesis further. So if you understand you're running out of time, then one of the reasons to hand in your thesis still in a way that is not up to the standards could be this. Another reason, the first one is you enter by gambling on luck. I also see this a lot of times, that the student just run out of motivation. So they say, okay, I now will hand it in. I can't work on that further. This is something you perhaps should not try, and rather seek help and support, so to get it up to the standards. And a third case that is also very common is that you're just very nervous. And so this is something where you can be training. So how to prepare for the Viva? First of all, check your institution's policies and practices, but also within the faculty and the program. What are the expectations on the thesis? How is it supposed to be structured? And what type of knowledge needs to be created? This is one of the first things. So this is something that starts actually before you hand in your thesis. A lot of times, once students come to us to prepare for the Viva, this is unfortunately something that had been forgotten. However, the thesis is already submitted, so nothing can be done at this point in time. If the Viva date is some months after you handed in your thesis, and that well can be like 3, 6, 7 months, then reread your thesis, make sure you are up to date. Also know who is the examiner, what are the backgrounds, what are the publications, what are the questions that might be expected. Then further think about implications of your work. What is it really that you have achieved? What is it that your research has been showing, what it has not been showing? And think about what you will or won't defend. This is something also very important, because you should not try to defend each of the points that is questioned in the thesis. I mean, your research is not perfect, and you should be well aware about the points that could have been better, and you should perhaps try to map those out and write them down early enough, and then look at it with some distance again and see, okay, this is a point that if questioned, yes, I will need to explain it further, why it happened, how it happened. So yeah, this is not to say that you should be proactively say, yeah, that was weak. But on the other hand, if you see, yes, it was weak, and you're questioned on that, that you reflect on it and engage in the discussion and show why it is. Another thing that should be done is list possible questions that you find difficult to answer, and then develop the answers that you have to it. So practice your answers and ideally do that in a number of ways. And at the Viva, bring a printed copy to it and ideally annotate it and have some stickers, post-its on the side so that you quickly can navigate through it. Now, from submission to preparation, what shall you do? Get to know the profiles, previous publications and experiences of the examiners, put together a timetable on how you will prepare from now until the Viva and try to stick to that timetable, essay, make summary notes, and print a table of contents so you have a high-level overview of your thesis. Ideally, you should know it by heart already, but the table of content should provide you with a holistic overview of your thesis. So if you have not submitted your thesis, consider not using generic headings like problem description, literature review, but tell about what is it about. If the problem is high turnover rates in the organization, then give it a headline like that. Do not use generic headlines or combine generic headlines with concrete ones so that you have a high level holistic perspective of your thesis on one page or on 2 pages. Now, one of the things, since the Viva is an oral only undertaking, is you need to really be fluent. You need to know how to express yourself and you need to quickly spell out things. And quickly literally means quickly. Very often it happens that at the beginning of the Viva, there's an icebreaker question. Sum up your thesis research in a paragraph. And there the student goes, and after 10 minutes, once he grasps and tries to breathe, that's the first chance the examiners have to interrupt the student. So don't do that mistakes. So express how you verbalize the different parts of the thesis by chapter, have it written out in small chunks, small sentences, and then always stop yourself. It's like the 2 minutes rule of thumb. After 2 minutes, stop yourself and ask reflective questions back to the examiners. Did this answer the question? I see from your face, I might have gone the wrong way. Try to read and understand the facial expressions of the examiners and to engage with them. So it doesn't need to be a one-directional question and answer dialogue, but try to engage, but not to challenge the examiners. Likewise, and with this, if you reflect, try to reflect loudly, verbalize your reflections, and try to engage the examiners in those reflections that provide opportunities for them to follow up in a way that you want it to be followed and not to ask random questions that you perhaps would not want. So it's really a discourse rather than a one-sided communication flow. With this, what are preparation strategies? General preparation is learn from past experiences wherever you can get hold of that experiences, be it earlier Viva questions and reports from within your faculty, try to connect to other students or find online resource bases and communities. I know that some students really are preparing comprehensively for the thesis and afterwards they are very happy to share it. So try to engage with students that you know, either from your faculty or from online communities. This is a very effective mean. Then obviously there's a specific preparation exactly as those other students that prepare very well, try to do the same. Put everything in written and then practice it orally. Furthermore, check with your faculty what is available and who is available. Often there are training resources, but sometimes there are also training sessions. So if your university is offer something like that, give it a consideration. And finally, experimental preparation, have a dry run. Try to have a real experience of the Viva. Again, if your faculty is offering that, that's great. Then try to benefit from that. If not, then try to find other opportunities. For example, at the DoctorateHub, we offer nowadays 2 ways of practicing. On the one hand, traditionally, we have been offering a mock Viva offered by 2 professors that we will resource for you. More recently, we have been introducing 8 weeks training course, which comes as a benefit for allowing you more on reflecting on the different subjects. So see, this usually has 6 chapters or 6 areas to be covered. And there will be some scene setting questions. And at the end, there will be a wrap it up questions. Therefore, we designed an 8 weeks course. We will make this course soon available for free self-studying. So be invited to use it and to experience how a Viva will feel like. Good. Are there any questions to this point before we come what to expect in the Viva? Anyone, any questions?
Andreas, it's Jim here.
Hello, Jim.
How are you today?
I'm great, and you?
Good, thank you. What's the expectation on the part of our primary supervisor as to how much they would be involved in the preparation for the Viva? And specifically, if you've got experience with some of the supervisors at the University of Liverpool?
Let me rather refer to my own experience, perhaps. In my case, I had 3 supervisors, which is a pretty good ratio. And they have been very supportive. But once it came to the Viva preparation, I think they were pointing me to resources. But that's as far as it went. So this is perhaps what can be expected, or at least it's what I experienced. What I do for my students is I usually provide them with a list of questions, and with some resources, but I think that's the most a supervisor can do, and there's a pretty good reason for that. It's not that you want to be not more supportive, but I know the work of my students by heart after so many years, or so I think. So I will be pretty colorblind and biased. There will be a lot of things that are obviously pretty bad for examiners in the thesis that they immediately will see and say, oh, damn it, which I will already not spot. This is perhaps, after so many years, yeah, one gets colorblind. Is that providing the level of information that you're looking for?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. That's kind of what I expected, but I just wanted to make sure that my experience wasn't different from yours or others.
Yeah, so I think the reason for that is there's really not much that the supervisor can do except pointing you to resources and others, because he's knowing your work. He's knowing what you likely will tell about the different points, because he was listening over and over to it through the years. It's like a long-term marriage, right? You know exactly what the other wants.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so what to expect in the Viva and what not to expect. Let's see what to expect. So usually questions will be around 4 categories. What is it about? What did you do? What did you find? And why does it matter? So next, there will be warm-up questions, confirmatory questions, deep confirmatory questions, calibration questions, scholarship questions, and salvaging questions. So the last one is to be seen with care, because as an examiner, they surely don't want you to draw. They will push it till the limit, but they do not want to break you. And this is a very delicate process, in particular if you're undertaking your Viva remotely, because it's not uncommon, in particular if the examiners are a bit less experienced or a bit more robust, that students get broken. And this is something, an experience that is not nice, because it's really a nervous breakdown. And certainly the last things that we would want once examining a student, physical consequences afterwards. So prepare yourself that you will be pushed until the edge, and understand what type of person are you. Are you an angry person? Do you react with anger if someone is pushing you? If you're an angry person, think about how to mediate it, and think about how to inform the examiners in a gentle way about it. For example, say, well, I think I'm now a bit more nervous, or I see the heat is going up. I just need 2 seconds more to think. This is trying to, in a gentle way, level the field to further continue the discussion. Now, what examiners, however, won't do is they won't rescue you and tire you, and they won't tell you once you start engaging in nonsense communication. They might do so by exactly getting angry themselves. But as said earlier, it's not a one-directional discourse. It's a discussion. So ask recovery questions like, am I still on the right track? Did this answer your question? And try to get reassurance. And if not, also ask what, and then be specific. What of what I just said, and then be specific and spell it out, didn't make sense to you. So this is an option that should be explored. Now, what might impress examiners? Generally, it will impress them if you are up to the point, if you don't go around. As said, the 2 minutes rules, if there's a question, answer direct to it. If you have sub-arguments that you see need to be brought into, break it down in several sentences, bring the sub-arguments in standalone sentences, and then again, go back. So it's one answer, one sentence, one argument, pause it. And if you have a number of arguments that you will want to present, make it clear upfront once you start your response. And after the main introduction, you might also want to ask, do you want to hear now the sub-arguments that I consider to be of importance to this? This gives the examiners the chance to call you back, like, no, actually it's pretty clear to us, or yes, please, and then spell out what are your sub-arguments, and then you might want to play the ball back again. Do you want all of the 5 sub-arguments to be explained in detail? This again gives the examiners the opportunity to say, no, actually only the 2 ones here I would see to be more in detail explained. And this type of discourse, if you start out the Viva like that, will put the level in your favor, and you will have a very enjoyable Viva experience. What you shouldn't do in the Viva is to opinionate, like, in my opinion, this should be like that. This is not what is of relevance. Well, in my view at least, I think working over arguments that are evidence-based and literature-based, analytic-based, will put you in a much stronger position and allow you to justify why you have been doing things or not doing others. This is also important. Draw your boundaries. Know why you have not been doing some things while you could. So it's not only explaining what you have in your thesis, but also what you do not have in your thesis. Any questions on this? Okay. Now, the Viva day. You will be pretty nervous, very likely. So try to get some rest and not stress yourself, and do just everything that you have been doing in any other examination or any other important days that you had that is comparable. Make sure you have questions studied and attend. Now, if you have a remote Viva, one of the beautiful things is that the examiners will only see what's behind you, but not what's in front of you. So you can have post-its, pictures, any type of resources glued to your screen, to the wall, whatever helps you So if you have a remote Viva, take advantage of it. You will have disadvantages, which is the lack of physical contact. You can't read the other person that well. So there are disadvantages, but try to also benefit on it. And get ready to answer questions that are tough and to not get angry. Have an understanding of the strengths and weaknesses, as said, have that well mapped out, and try not to be angry or offended. The questions will go till the limit, that's clear. Try to have that trained before and try to have your temper under control, and also try to make sure that you're not getting too nervous. Also, it's pretty clear that you see this is a very comprehensive piece of work and that you have been carrying out research over many, many years, and that some things might be forgotten. Some pieces of your thesis will have been written 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so if you get lost, that's not a problem, but make sure that you get yourself back on track. And if questions do not make sense, also make sure that you clarify them. It's, as said, not a one-directional discourse, but it's a discussion. So you're expected to ask for clarifications. You are expected to take yourself time before answering it. It's not about quickly getting out an answer. You won't run out of time in a Viva. It might take 2 or 3 hours until it's done. It's totally normal. So take yourself the time to think things through. But if you think, then also verbalize your thinking, either by saying, oh, I now need a minute to think about that, or think loudly and building up an argument that allows examiners to follow your line of thought, but also to engage with you. So, as said, not expected to have a perfect recall. You can refer to notes. Stick notes in your printed thesis can help you to quickly navigate through it. Having a table of content singled out as a piece of paper at another side helps you for a high-level reflection. If you have done anyway a good work in the first instance and have specific headlines rather than generic ones, that also allows you to have a good grasp of what is where. And if you get lost, resume it and get yourself back, and try to read from the facial expressions, but also from the words that the examiner spell out. Do they want you to continue, or do they want to recall you back on track? Good. This is the Viva day. Are there any further questions on the Viva day right now?
So Andreas, it's Jim again. So is it ever appropriate to refer the examiners to a specific place in the thesis and reference something specifically in the thesis that they might have in front of them?
What was the last sentence that they might?
So to say on page such and such, in paragraph such and such, referring them to something specific in the thesis, in the written document, is that ever appropriate?
Yes, it is. It's not only appropriate, I think this is expectable.
So it's not just, you're not just giving things from memory, you're bringing them into specific places in the written document, referring to that, backing up your answers with what's in the thesis and other evidence.
Yes. So I see I need to bring in a slide exactly explaining that. Yes, it's not, it's not only something to be considered, it's the standard and to be expected. Like in your thesis, you're expected to be very specific in your analytics and in your reflections. The same holds valid for the Viva. So if you can refer the examiners to a specific page where it's written down, that's the best thing you can do. They can look at it. They can say, okay, clarified, or no, actually, we don't get it from that sentence. I think you will need to explain it in a different way. And those are then the minor or major modifications you're expected to do afterwards. So as more specific as you can be is better, because you give the examiners the chance to say, okay, box box ticked next. Elsewise, if you only verbalize it, but don't reference to your thesis, then they will need to ask the follow-up question, so where is it written?
Great. One other question, how far in advance do you typically know the name of each of the examiners so that you can understand what their area of research is?
Usually 2 to 3 months, I would say. And I mean, that's I find this from a different perspective a tricky question. Is it important to know who are your examiners or not? So that's a bit a yes and a no answer. Yes, it is important because you can see and anticipate some sort of questions, but it might also bias you in the way you prepare for the Viva, and then the examiner is really not, by the end of the day, coming up with questions from his profile, but with questions from your thesis, and you haven't prepared for that. So it's a bit of a tricky question. If you have a lot of time at hand, prepare for both scenarios, so you're on the safe side. If you don't have it, I personally would say prepare for knowing your work and explaining it in depth rather than preparing for who's your examiner. So if time is an issue, I would go rather for what have I been doing and am I able to explain that? If time is no issue, you can prepare for both sides. That would be my take on that.
Could I possibly?
Thank you.
Could I possibly add one thing to that, Andreas?
Yes, please.
I think that there is one case, or at least there is one thing then during the preparation you might want to make sure, which is, imagine you have a qualitative research and you face a quantitative examiner. Yeah, this is something that can deeply question methodology, for instance, that you apply, which also means that you'll need to be very well prepared to explain why you did things the way you did, why was that the methodology that you consider to be of relevance and adequate to answer your problem, your questions, yeah? Because this is something that sometimes happens that you, due to the nature of the researcher, of the research, and if the examiner comes from a different background, could be deeply challenged, okay? Whether they publish 10 papers or 5 papers, yeah, if you have the time, scan through. But understanding if he comes from a different paradigm, this is crucial for you to understand how far you need to prepare on certain aspects.
That's quite a dilemma, if that happens.
It is, but unfortunately I already saw theses that exactly ended up with major and resubmission exactly because of this, yeah? It was a qualitative research, for instance, the case I have in mind. The examiner was quantitative, and exactly the student did not manage to explain why she did things the way she did it, yeah? And she ended up of having major and really severe changes were requested. Okay, so this is I think the only brackets that I'll do to Andreas, and that is make sure if that's the case that you are prepared.
Thank you, Anna. All right, so there are expectable questions that will be put forward through the Viva, and I'm now not going through it in detail. So basically, you can expect 8 sort of questions, which start with the icebreaker questions and scene setting. Then it goes through the 6 areas of your thesis, like introduction, literature review, the research design and methodology, the analysis, and the review and reflections. As said, we will put on our website a free 8 weeks course on Viva preparation, and you can see you will be able to see a lot of those questions in there, and that will provide you with the opportunity to study it. Those that are short in time and want to have those questions earlier, reach out to me and I can send them to you by email, or just work through those ones that are in this slideshow. So those are questions that in one form or the other will come up, and then there will be others that are more tailored to your thesis, to your method, to what you have been doing. So make sure that you prepare for both. Then, after the Viva, what's going to happen? First of all, you will be relieved. Stress will go down, and you might feel a bit tired and also a bit lost. So you will have the post-Viva symptom, which is very normal. The question is how quickly you get it and how long will it take. Now, in my case, as a full-time, once I took my PhD and had my Viva, I was still working full-time. So afterwards, it was work as usual. And my post-Viva experience only came 2 years after, once I changed jobs and once there was a time where I had time. And then it was a very, very deep hole in which I was thinking. And we had some learning cafes, and many of the people who went through the Viva, who attended the learning cafes at the DoctorateHub over the past months, were experiencing the same symptoms. So be prepared that there might be some difference that you experience in yourself, starting with stress is going down, you are feeling more relaxed. Even if you come out with major modifications, this is something that can be expected. And if you come out with major modifications, this can be a very tricky thing because you still will need to do a significant amount of work, but this might conflict with the motivation and strengths that you still experience and have. So understand if this is happening, what's going on, and get help. Do not let yourself going down. Do what needs to be done and do not do it alone. Talk with others, be it your supervisor, be it your peers, or any other psychological support that you might need at this point in time. I think it's very important to be prepared for this situation. And if you want to discuss it further or experience it, be very much welcome to reach out to us in any format you like. And for those that got majors equally, we do have a number of resources available, such as past webinars, but also an online course that, like all other courses, will be made soon available for free self-studying, next to being available as a tutored course. So be very much welcome. With this, let me stop the recording